Hey guys, welcome back to JK Fishing. Today we're going to show you another regular maintenance activity that we do on our boat to replace the water pump impeller in the lower unit. It's another thing that you should be doing quite regularly, especially as it's the real heart of your cooling system within your outboard motor. Before we get into the work though, make sure you hit that subscribe button. You can stay up to speed on all the fishing action we have coming this spring and in the summer, and on any other repairs that we need to do on this this engine and the boat that we've got. So as I mentioned, the water pump or impeller is the heart of your cooling system. What it does is when you're out in the water, it's sucking water in through these intakes here. It comes in through the impeller, which turns with your drive shaft here, and it basically pulls water in through your engine and cools it off as you're running. Without it, your motor's gonna not last very long. And basically, when you see the water squirting out of this port here, it tells you that the water is being sucked in, going through the motor to cool it, and it's coming out nicely. So what we've noticed when we started up this motor after storing it for a few months in the cold here in Canada is it wasn't coming out very strong, and so we want to replace this impeller. And so something you should probably do almost every 500 hours on your boat, maybe a little bit more frequent depending on what kind of pressure you're seeing here. So we're going to remove the propeller very easily so that we don't have to deal with this or scratch it or damage it as we take the lower unit off. And we're going to take this to the bench. I'm going to show you how we replace that water pump and impeller. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is take off the prop. A couple main reasons I like to do this is, number one, so I can move the lower unit and not worry about damaging this. It makes it a little bit easier to handle, a little bit lighter, but also it gives me a chance to inspect for any fishing line or anything that might be between the prop and the prop shaft stuck in there that could damage your seals. We got another video on replacing those seals. Check it in the link below in the description. It's a great video, and it'll show you how you can do that yourself. But let's get to removing the prop. I'm going to basically straighten out the cotter pin here. Simply, that's what's holding this prop in place and preventing it from sliding off or from the nut loosening up. So we're just going to take a pair of needle nose pliers here, straighten it out. I have a rag here just so I'm not leaning up and scratching against my my prop. Hopefully this is just going to pop out. Once we can grab it, I'm going to just pull it out with the needle nose pliers. Okay, so we got the cotter pin out. It was a little bit difficult, so you're not going to see too much of us laboring over that. We had to really straighten it out and use a little mallet and something to tap on it to get it to come through. But finally we got it. Now we're removing the nut that holds the prop on. We just use a ratchet here. I've got a big enough ratchet here that will do it. You can buy a prop wrench, which would also do the job. What you're going to do is you're going to want to make sure you keep the same order for anything that you pull out here when you're taking off the prop. Should come off pretty easily as we go. And there you have it. Prop is off. We're going to grease that up a little bit later as well. Make sure that everything's good before we put this back together. Now that we got the prop taken off, what we're going to do is remove the lower unit. Now, there's a couple bolts that are going to be used to take it apart and separate it from the rest of the motor. One bolt's going to be underneath this little cap right here. We're going to remove this rubber cap, and then you'll see the bolt under there. Should come off pretty easily. Again, who knows when this was last replaced or when someone last did any work on this thing. Definitely hasn't been since we bought this. There we go.
Sealed, right?
It's definitely sealed. There we go. Now down in there you're going to see a bolt. I believe it's either a 12 millimeter or a 14, and there you go, it's a 12. You might want an extension to put on your ratchet here. Now you're going to see this anode here that's going to loosen up as I'm loosening this bolt, so you might want to hold that in place. There we go. You may want to replace this too. We'll see how kind of shape it's in for later. There's the bolt. Before we put this back in, what we're going to do is add a little bit of lubricant on there as well later on. The next bolt that we got to remove is under here. It was underneath the anode, so once you remove that, it exposes that bolt. We're going to loosen this up. Now, before we put everything back together here later, what you're going to see us do is add a little bit of lubricant to all of these bolts just so that they're easy to remove later. They don't corrode where they're in place. Now, since we're mostly or completely in fresh water, I'm not super concerned. You can see this one probably had a little bit of lubricant or sealant on there as well. So we'll make sure that we add some back later on. Now, last part that we're going to have to remove before we start to see it separate, you'll see the line along here where the lower unit is going to separate from the top of the motor. There's going to be 6 more bolts, 1, 2, 3 on this side, and then we're going to have 3 on this side. They're a little hard to get into, so you got to get a small enough ratchet that you can fit it in there, and you'll be able to remove them. So we're going to take those 6 out, and then the lower unit should come out. Make sure that when you're doing this, of course, you're raising up the motor as high as you can get it, and be careful you don't lose this lower unit pulling it out. You don't want to drop that. Okay, so I've almost got the last bolt out here, 6 of them. It takes a little while. You're going to want to be careful you're not scratching the side of the motor here. I made a little scratch on the other side using the ratchet, and now I switched to using just a normal wrench. And once you got all 6 out, basically this should pop out of place relatively easily. Okay, so I'm going to apply a little bit of pressure. You'll see it's starting to separate there. It's great if you got 2 guys to do this, but unfortunately I don't. So I'm going to take it out nice and slowly. We're going to have to take apart this hose here. So we had a little problem here. I never realized that this hose was connected. I should have thought that it would be somewhere. So we unscrewed the hose. We couldn't get it off of the little nipple that it attaches to here. So we unscrewed it. We'll put that back in later. Now what we should see is that this should come out nice and smooth. And you want to be careful not to damage the end there. All right, so we got the whole lower unit removed from the motor, and this is actually the water pump where inside we'll find the impeller. So we're going to remove that. You see what I've done with the box here just to keep this vertical and straight up. I didn't want to damage the prop shaft here, and I definitely don't want to damage this here either as well. So we'll get to removing these 4 bolts here, which is what keeps the impeller here within the water pump, and then we'll see what's going on there. Okay, so we're going to just remove these 4 bolts. Just remember, this thing's plastic, so when you do go later on to retighten them, you're going to have to be careful you don't over tighten. Now, we ordered a whole repair kit. It's in the mail right now. We got an aftermarket non-OEM brand. We'll see what that looks like. It's not something you really want to cheap out on, but what I've been told is that the aftermarket ones are very high quality and very similar in quality to the Yamaha. So we'll see what it looks like, and we'll see what this one looks like on the inside. But they should be almost identical items or products. Okay, we got all 4 of those bolts out. Now what we're going to have to do is probably use a screwdriver just to pop this up, because it seems like it's pretty stuck in there. Now the good news is we ordered a whole repair kit, as I mentioned earlier, and that whole repair kit comes with a new gasket. So even if we damage it under here, it should be okay, because we'll be replacing that. There, you see it starting to slide up. Once we get it going, the hope is that it'll slide all the way up. Those little rubber rings there as well. We got new ones there that we'll be able to replace coming in the repair kit. So doesn't look too bad in here, to be quite honest. We'll probably apply some O-ring lubricant or something here as well. We'll check and replace everything. Here's the impeller that you'll see. Now, as the shaft turns, as you accelerate with the boat, this turns faster and more water gets sucked in through the intakes and circulated through the motor. So this actually doesn't look like it's in terrible condition, to be quite honest. I'll see when I get the new one. There's a little bit of wear on here, but overall, they're pretty solid. These, you'll see a little bit of cracking going on in there, which at high speeds and maybe at higher pressure, it might not be so good. So we'll replace it regardless, but we'll see how bad this one was compared to the new one once we get it in a couple days. Okay, so next thing we got to remove is this little retaining ring or whatever it's called here. So we're going to try and pop this up, turn it a bit, loosen it on all sides. Sometimes this can be difficult. I wonder if it's supposed to be under there, but I get it. See, it's starting to come up, starting to separate. All right, so we got everything removed. We've cleaned up everything here the best we possibly could. And now we're going to start to reassemble everything. And so we obviously go in the reverse order here. And so we are going to have our gasket, which goes on this way like this. We're going to do the smooth side facing up here, like this. That doesn't quite line up, so I think I put it the wrong way here. There we go. That lines up properly now. Next thing we're going to put on is the plate here. Should go down smoothly. And now we're going to put in the replacement pins. We'll tap those in a little bit better in a second. I'm just going to give them a Okay, now we're going to get that Woodrow key placed in. Important we do this right, because I don't want to have to do this again. See how easily that one goes in, right? The other one was so difficult to get out. And so that one seems to go in much better. Okay. So we're all good there. Now let's get the impeller placed on. We're gonna make sure we line up that key. It's a super tight fit. And it may actually help if we lubricate this a little bit. So I bought some Quicksilver marine grease. Got this online. This should do the trick for us. So I put just a little bit of this lube between the drive shaft here and the impeller. Goes on much easier that way. And now I can line up that little Woodrow key with the slot on the impeller. You'll see it lines up perfectly on there. And we can see it turns nicely. Okay. Next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to add back those washers. So we'll put a flat washer on. We'll put the wavy washer on. And then another flat washer. That should go all the way down. Next thing we do is we put this little plastic sleeve. You can reuse this. I did not get a new one in the kit that I received. So we're going to put that right down. And then we have this little aluminum sleeve that goes over. And we're going to probably have to just tap that down gently. I'll just go real gentle on it. Okay, looks like it's in good position now. Okay, so next thing we got to do is we're going to take the housing and we're going to put the a little bit of lubricant in there as well. I'm going to put this lubricant inside the channel where the little notch or ridge where the O-ring is going to go. So you'll see this one will go in there. And the grease will hold it in place. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to put this new insert in here, and it has to line up. You're going to see like a couple notches here on the bottom. These two notches that I'm pointing at right here and right down here, they're going to have to line up with the two slots here, and you should feel it almost click into place once they're aligned. You'll feel it just fit right in there. And the washer or the O-ring that's behind there should be held in place now. Next, I'm going to put just a little bit of grease again in here where this other O-ring is going to go. And that will just hold it in place so that when I'm inserting it upside down, it's not going to fall out. So this should fit in nicely, take on the shape that it needs to. And there we go. Okay, so as we bring the housing down, what you're going to want to do is you're going to actually have to start to turn this. And it's important that you get the right direction here in terms of lining it up with the way it was before. Okay, so that proved to be a bit more difficult than I was expecting. It really helped to have an extra set of hands. So Johnny, thanks for putting down the phone and helping me out. Also, it helped to grip at the top of the drive shaft here where you actually had some grip and you were able to twist it. The trick is when you're trying to twist it in and set it inside the housing, you really got to push down hard on the housing and twist at the same time. You got to make sure as well that you're actually twisting it the right way. So I made sure that I kept this on the bench in the direction that I took it off, so that I could see and just confirm that I was twisting it the right way. So as we turned, we were turning clockwise from this position to get it to sit in, and it took the straight impeller and it bent all the different arms and fit right into the housing there. So I'm going to get these bolts back in. I'm going to add a little bit of lubricant on each one of them so they come out nice and easily next time. And then we're going to get the lower unit put back on the boat, and we're going to test this thing out. Well, guys, we finished with the impeller replacement. We didn't catch a lot of it on video. It took us a little longer than we thought. We had a number of challenges along the way, but we did get it finished. We've reassembled the lower unit to the motor. What we did make sure to do while we were putting everything back together was put a lot of marine grease on the prop shaft as we were putting the propeller back on the drive shaft before we put the lower unit back on, and on all the bolts that we put on. So the 3 on this side, 3 on the other side, the top and the bottom one through the anode here. So we use lots of marine grease to make sure that nothing seizes up later for us. Everything else we put back together was the exact opposite of how we took it apart. So you can always go backwards through what we did to disassemble it when you're putting it back together, and that should help you out. Now we're going to get this tested. We're going to start up the motor. We're going to see if the impeller's working, if we got some water squirting out of the motor. We've got our muffs on here. We're going to be feeding it with some water as we start it. Never run your engine dry without water source, and we'll see how it works. So hold on. Well, Johnny's up there. He's going to crawl under the cover there and start up the motor for us. And we're going to see how she goes. We got the cover off because we're going to be testing out the spark plugs and looking at a couple more things yet. Let's see if... So all it took was a little bit of extra pressure on those muffs to squeeze them tighter so that the water was getting there and we were really flooding the impeller. And so it started to squirt right away. So troubleshooting, all good. As Johnny would say, great success. And so we're pretty happy now. Seems like it's working, and hopefully be on the water soon. Last thing we're gonna check later, spark plugs and spark plug wires. That's our next project, Johnny. Okay. We're all finished with the impeller replacement in the Yamaha 150. Thanks again for tuning in. Hopefully you found something interesting or useful in our repair here. Don't forget, we're doing most of these things for the first time, so we're going to make mistakes. Stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe for more how-to videos as we take care of our boat, usually as a DIY. And stay tuned for some fishing action this spring.